The attack came at midnight when the moons of Vareth Prime were dark and the palace was quiet. Cather was in her chambers reading reports from the outer colonies when she heard the first explosion. The floor shook beneath her feet. Alarms began to scream. Through her window she could see fire rising from the eastern wing of the palace. Her guards burst through the door. "My queen, we must go. The generals have turned against you." Cathara did not waste time with questions. She had feared this day. For years she had hoped it would never come, but she had prepared for it. The emergency tunnels, she said. Now they ran through the ancient passages beneath the palace, passages that had not been used in centuries. Behind them they could hear the sounds of battle. Her loyal soldiers were fighting to give her time to escape. Many of them would die. Tonight Keith wanted to go back. She wanted to fight beside them, but she knew that if she died, everything she had worked for would die with her. The reformers would be scattered and destroyed. The old ways would return. The wars would begin again. She had to survive. She had to fight back. But first she had to escape. They emerged from the tunnels in a forest far from the palace. Only 7 guards remained. With her, 7 out of the hundreds who had sworn to protect her. The others were dead or captured. "What are your orders, my queen?" asked her captain, a scarred warrior named Kelvos who had been with her since the beginning. Cathara looked back toward the distant glow of the burning palace. Her home, her throne, everything she had built. "We run," she said. "We hide, we gather our strength, and then we take it all back." The news spread across the Dominion like wildfire. Queen Cather had been overthrown. General Varnak had declared himself regent. The reforms were being reversed. The old ways were returning, and the Varati warfleet was preparing to attack. Their first target was the United Earth Coalition. Man had chosen his enemy carefully. The humans were strong enough to be a worthy conquest, but not so strong that they could defeat the full might of the Varati Dominion. A quick victory would prove that his way was the right way. It would show the other brutes that kindness was weakness, that the only path to glory was through blood and fire. The first human colony to fall was called New Haven. It was a small world on the edge of human space, home to 200,000 people, farmers, mostly families who had left Earth seeking a quiet life. Among the stars, the Varati fleet arrived without warning. They did not offer terms of surrender. They did not try to negotiate. They simply began to kill. When it was over, nothing remained. The colony was ash and rubble. The people were gone, and the Varati generals sent a message to Earth. "This is what happens to those who are weak." The humans were shocked. For years they had believed that the Varat were changing. They had signed trade agreements with Cathara. They had welcomed Varati diplomats into their cities. They had begun to think of the alien empire as a partner, not a threat. Now they understood the truth. The reformers had lost. The monsters were back. War was declared. Human fleets mobilized. Young men and women across Earth and its colonies signed up to fight. They were scared, but they were also angry. New Haven would not be forgot. New Haven would be avenged. Danny Cole was 43 years old when the war began. He had spent the last 20 years as a military medic, serving on ships and stations throughout human space. He had seen injuries and death. He had saved lives and lost lives. He had grown older and quieter, but his hands were still steady and his heart was still kind. When he heard about New Haven, he felt sick. He had followed the news from the Varat Dominion for years. Ever since that long ago day on the ice moon, he had watched Catharos rise with a strain sort of pride, like a father watching his child succeed. He had believed that she would change things. He had believed that his small act of kindness had somehow made a difference. Now it seemed like all of that was meaningless. War machines were rolling again. The old hatreds were burning again, and nothing he had done mattered at all. But Danny did not give up. He could not change the past. He could not stop the war by himself, but he could still save lives. That was what he was good at. That was what he had always done. He volunteered for frontline duty, the most dangerous assignments, the places where the fighting was thickest and the casualties were highest. He worked in forward medical stations just behind the battle lines, treating wounded soldiers who were carried back from the chaos. War was brutal. The variety were fierce and disciplined, and they showed no mercy. Human colonies fell one after another. The death toll climbed into the millions. Families were torn apart. Cities were destroyed. Hope began to fade. Danny kept working. He operated on soldiers while bombs fell around him. He held dying men and women in his arms and told them they would be okay, even when he knew they would not. He did not sleep. He barely ate. He just kept saving lives one at a time, because that was all he could do. Far away on a hidden moon at the edge of Varati space, Cathara was doing the same thing. She had gathered her loyalists around her. Not many at first, a few hundred soldiers who had refused to follow the user, the handful of ships that had slipped away before the generals could seize them. But the numbers grew as word spread that the queen was still alive. They called themselves the True Varati. They believed in Catharos's vision. They believed that their people could be more than conquerors and destroyers, and they were willing to fight for that belief. Cathara led raids against the user. Fleet small strikes, hit and run. They could not win a direct battle, but they could hurt the enemy. They could slow them down. They could show the humans that not all Varati were their enemies. She tried to send messages to the human commanders. She told them she wanted to help. She told them she had information that could turn the tide of the war, but her messages were ignored or dismissed as tricks. Why would anyone trust a Variety queen? Why would anyone believe that she was different? Cathara understood their fear. She did not blame them, but she did not give up. She would find a way. She had to, because the war was destroying both their peoples, and only together could they stop it. Somewhere out there, she knew, was the human who had saved her life, the one with the gentle hands and the warm voice. She did not know if he was still alive. She did not know if he remembered her, but she remembered him. She had never stopped remembering him, and if she ever found him again, she would tell him what his kindness had meant. She would tell him that he had changed everything. The cargo ship was falling apart. Danny Cole held onto a metal pipe as the whole vessel shook and screamed. Around him, red lights flashed everywhere. Alarms rang so loud he could not hear his own thoughts. Through the small window, he saw the white surface of an ice moon rushing up to meet them. "Brace for impact," the captain shouted through the speakers. Danny closed his eyes and thought of home. He thought of his mother's kitchen and the smell of coffee in the morning. He thought of the small town in Ohio where he grew up, where nothing ever happened and life was simple and safe. He was only 23 years old. He was not ready to die. Dots. Ship hit the ground like a giant fist. Punching through ice, Danny was thrown across the room. His head struck something hard. Everything went black. When he woke up, the world was cold and quiet. His breath came out in white clouds. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. He tried to move, and pain shot through his left arm, but he was alive. Danny was a medic. He had joined the cargo crew because he wanted to see the stars, to travel beyond Earth and witness the wonders of space. Now he was lying in the wreckage of that dream, freezing to death on a moon he had never heard of. He forced himself to stand. The ship was destroyed. Great holes had been torn in the walls, and through them he could see nothing but ice and darkness. The temperature was dropping fast. Thought other survivors began to gather. There were 11 of them out of a crew of 32. Captain Martha Price was alive, though her leg was badly broken. The engineer, a quiet man named Sam Bishop, had burns on his hands but could still work. The others were scared and hurt and lost. We need to find shelter, the captain said. Her voice was steady, even though her face was pale with pain. Danny, check everyone for injuries. Sam, see what you can salvage from the ship. Danny went to work. He set broken bones, cleaned wounds, and handed out the few painkillers they had saved from the medical bay. He worked through the cold, his fingers going numb, his body shaking, but he did not stop. These people needed him. It was on the second day that Danny found the alien. He was searching through Ockener to collapsed section of the ship looking for supplies when he heard a sound. It was soft and weak, like a kitten crying. He pushed aside a metal panel and looked down. The creature was small, no bigger than a human child. Its body was covered in scales that might have been beautiful, once colored like purple and blue gemstones. But now those scales were dull and cracked. Its eyes were closed and its breathing was so shallow that Danny almost thought it was dead. He had never seen anything like it in all his training and all the books he had read about alien species. He had never encountered this kind of being. He did not know what it was or where it had come from, but he knew it was dying. Danny picked up the creature carefully. It weighed almost nothing. He could feel its small heart beating against his chest. Fast and frightened, he carried it back to the makeshift shelter the crew had built from ship parts. What the hell is that? Captain Price asked when she saw him. I don't know, Danny said, but it needs help. The captain stared at him. Her eyes were hard. We barely have enough supplies for ourselves. We can't waste resources on some alien animal. She's not an animal, Danny said. He did not know why he said she. He did not know why he was so certain. She's a child. Look at her. The creature's eyes opened, then they were the color of broken amethysts, purple and deep and full of fear. She looked at Danny with those eyes, and something passed between them, something he could not explain. Please, Danny said to the captain, I'll use my own rations. I'll give her my share, but I won't let her die. Captain Price looked at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head and turned away. Do what you want, but if she becomes a problem, she goes out into the cold. Danny did not care. He had made his choice. For the next 6 weeks while they Waited for rescue, Danny kept the alien alive. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. She could not eat human food. At first, he had to mash it into paste and warm it with his own body heat. Before she could swallow it, she could not regulate her temperature, so Danny wrapped her in blankets and held her close to his chest for hours at a time. When she whimpered in pain, he sang too. Her old songs his grandmother had taught him, songs about rivers and mountains and homes far away. The other crew members thought he was crazy. Some of them were angry that he was wasting time and energy on an alien creature when they were all struggling to survive. But Danny did not listen to them. At night, when the ice moon was dark and the cold was so deep, it felt like knives cutting through his skin, Danny would hold the little alien and whisper to her. He told her about Earth. He told her about the ocean and the forests and the way the sun felt on your face in summer. He told her about his family and his dreams and his fears. She could not understand his words, but she understood his voice. She understood his hands, gentle and warm, always gentle and warm. Slowly she began to heal. Her scales grew brighter. Her eyes lost some of their fear. She started to make sounds that were almost like words, though Danny could not understand them. One night, she reached up and touched his face with her small hand. Her touch was cool and smooth like glass. She looked into his eyes and made a sound that might have been his name. Danny smiled. That's right, he said. I'm Danny. I'm not going to let anything hurt you. The rescue ship came on the 43rd day. When the crew was loaded onto the vessel, medical officers took the alien away from Danny. They said she would be returned to her people. They said there was a variety colony not far away and they would make sure she was safe. Danny watched them carry her off. She looked back at him with those purple eyes and she reached out one small hand toward him. Then she was gone. He never expected to see her again. 20 years later, he would stand on a battlefield covered in blood and fire, and he would learn how wrong he had been. The variety did not believe in weakness. Their empire was built on a simple rule: the strong survive and the weak are left behind. For 10,000 years this rule had guided them. It had made them powerful. It had made them feared across a 100 star systems. When the young larvae was returned to the Dominion, the elders looked at her with cold eyes. She had been abandoned on that ice moon for a reason. She had been too small, too sick, too different. The variant did not waste resources on those who could not survive on their own, but she had survived, and that made her interesting. They named her Cathara, which meant the one who returned in the old variety tongue. They placed her with the third brood, one of the lesser houses, and they watched her grow. The elders expected her to be grateful. They expected her to work hard to prove herself worthy of the second chance she had been given. They expected her to become a proper variant and ruthless. They were disappointed. Kia was different from her sisters, where they competed and fought and clawed their way toward power. She asked questions where they saw enemies and resources. She saw possibilities. When they spoke of conquest, she spoke of something else, something the Verat had never had a word for. Mercy. The human saved me, she told the elders. When they questioned her strange ideas, he had nothing to gain. He had everything to lose, but he saved me. Anyway, the elders did not understand. Humans are weak, they said. They are soft and emotional. This is why they will never be a great species. Maybe, Cathara said, or maybe their softness is a different kind of strength. Such words should have marked her for death. In the old days, a larva who spoke like this would have been killed before she could spread her dangerous ideas, but times were changing even in the Dominion. The old wars had cost them much. Their empire was tired, and some of the younger Variat were beginning to wonder if there might be another way. Catha grew quickly as her kind did. Within 5 years she had reached full maturity. She was tall and strong, her scales shining like precious gems, her eyes sharp with intelligence. She was beautiful in the way that storms are beautiful, powerful and dangerous, and impossible to ignore, but it was her mind that set her apart. Cathara learned everything she could about the other species in the galaxy. She studied their languages, their cultures, their histories. She paid special attention to the humans, these strange beings who had saved her life. She learned about their wars and their art, their cruelty and their kindness. She learned that they were capable of terrible things, but also of wonderful things, and she began to understand something that most variety never considered. The galaxy was full of different kinds of strength. The strength to fight was only one of them. There was also the strength to build, the strength to create, the strength to reach out a hand to a dying creature and say, "I will help you." When Cather spoke, others listened. Her ideas spread through the third brood like fire. Through dry grass, young Variat, who had grown tired of endless war, gathered around her. They were not many at first, but they were determined. The elders grew worried. They tried to silence her. They sent her on dangerous missions, hoping she would die. They spread lies about her, calling her a traitor, a human lover, a disgrace to her species. But Cathar would not be silenced, and she would not die. When the old queen of the third brood finally passed away, there was a struggle for power. The elders supported a traditional candidate, a warrior named Vithan, who believed in the old ways. But the young Virati supported Cathara. The fight was long and bloody. Vithan was strong and experienced, but Cathara was smart. She did not try to beat him through force alone. She made alliances. She made promises. She showed her people a vision of a future where the Virati did not have to be monsters. In the end, Cathara stood victorious. She became queen of the third brood, the youngest queen. Variat history, her first act was to reach out to the neighboring systems. Not with weapons, but with words. She proposed trade agreements instead of invasions. She offered peace treaties instead of demands for surrender. The other species were suspicious at first. The Virati had been their enemies for generations. Why should they trust this new queen? But Cathar was patient. She proved herself through actions, not just words. When a plague swept through a human colony on the edge of Variat space, she sent medical supplies instead of warships. When pirates attacked the trading route, she sent her own soldiers to protect the merchants, even though most of them were not Variety. Slowly, things began to change. The third brood grew wealthy through trade. Their people grew healthy through peace. Other broods began to notice. Some of them started to follow Cathar's example. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Variat had a queen who believed in something other than war, but not everyone was happy. The old guard watched Cathara's rise with growing anger. They called her reforms a betrayal of everything the Virati stood for. They said she was making them weak. They said she was destroying their empire from within. In the shadows, they began the plan. General Vernac was their leader. He was old and cruel. Veteran of 100 battles, he had killed more enemies than he could count. He had built his entire life on the old ways, and he would not let some young queen tear it all down. She must be stopped. He told his followers, she is leading us to ruin. The humans and the others will see our kindness as weakness. They will attack us when we are unprepared. We must strike first before it is too late. His followers agreed. They began to gather their strength quietly. Secretly, they placed their people in positions of power. They made deals with the other traditional brutes. They waited for the right moment. Cather knew something was wrong. She could feel it in the way certain generals looked at her. She could hear it in the whispers that stopped when she entered a room. But she did not know how deep the rot had spread. She did not know how many of her own people wanted her dead. She thought she had time. She thought she could win them over with results, with proof that her way was better. She was wrong. The storm was coming, and when it arrived, it would wash away everything she had built. 3 years of war had broken many things. Cities had fallen, fleets had burned, millions of lives had been lost. On both sides, the humans were tired. The Variety were divided, and still the fighting continued because no one knew how to stop it. Admiral Lisa Grant sat in her command center on the human flagship, staring at a map of the war. Red markers showed enemy positions. Blue markers showed her own forces. There was far too much red and not enough blue. The humans were losing slowly, but surely, if something did not change, they would lose everything. That was when the message arrived. It came through a channel that had been dead for years, an old diplomatic frequency that the Verat reformers had used before the coup. The message was simple. I am Keith Ara, true queen of the Virati Dominion. I request a meeting. I can help you win this war. Admiral Grant did not trust it. Her officers did not trust it. Every instinct told him it was a trap. The Verat were liars and killers. Why would their queen want to help the humans? But they were desperate, and desperate people take desperate chances. The meeting was arranged in secret on a dead moon far from the battle lines. Admiral Grant brought her best soldiers, armed and ready for treachery. She expected an ambush. She expected to die. What she got was a single Variety female, tall and proud, walking alone across the rocky ground with her hands empty and open. Cathara stopped a few meters from the human soldiers. Her scales gleamed in the pale light of distant stars. Her eyes, purple like broken gems, showed no fear. You came, she said. Her voice was calm and clear. I was not sure you would. Admiral Grant kept her hand near her weapon. You said you could help us talk. Keith nodded. She understood that trust would not come easily. It would have to be earned. The generals who overthrew me are not as strong as they appear, she said. Their alliance is held together by fear, not loyalty. Many of the brood leaders follow them only because they believe there is no other choice. If we can show them another way, they will turn. Show them what? The admiral asked. A victory, Cathara said. A single decisive strike against Vonak himself. If we can kill the leader, the alliance will crumble. My loyalists will rise. The war will end. Grant shook her head. Thorn ashes on Verith Prime. The most heavily defended world in your empire we've been trying to break through for 2 years. It's impossible. Not impossible, Keith said. Difficult, but I know things about Varth Prime that Varnick does not know. I know the gaps in his defenses. I know the weaknesses in his fleet. I have spent 3 years gathering this information, waiting for the right moment. She stepped closer. The human soldiers raised their weapons, but she ignored them. I am not asking you to trust me, she said. I know you have no reason to trust any Varadi, but I am asking you to believe that I hate Vern more than you do. He stole my throne. He murdered my friends. He has destroyed everything I tried to build. I want him dead, and I am willing to die to make it happen. Admiral Grant studied the alien queen. She had spent her entire career fighting Varadi. She had lost friends, colleagues, people she loved. Every part of her wanted to refuse this offer, to walk away, to keep fighting the war the way they had been fighting it. But they were losing, and this might be their only chance. Why? She asked. Why do you care about helping us? We're just humans. We're nothing to your people. Tether was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. 20 years ago, I was dying on an ice moon. I was small and weak and alone. A human found me. He could have left me there. He should have left me there, but he did not. He saved my life. She looked at the admiral with those strange purple eyes. He was a medic, a healer. He had hands that were always gentle, even when everything else was hard and cold. He sang to me. He kept me warm. He showed me that strength does not have to mean cruelty. That power does not have to mean destruction. Admiral Grant said nothing. She was listening. I became queen because of that human, Cathar continued. I tried to change my people. Because of him I failed, but I will not stop trying, because he taught me that even the smallest act of kindness can change the universe. She held out her hand, palm up, the variety gesture of peace. Help me end this war. Help me give my people a second chance, and I swear to you on his memory that I will never betray you. Admiral Grant looked at that outstretched hand. She thought about the millions who had died. She thought about the millions more who would die if the war continued. She thought about her own children back on Earth, growing up in a galaxy torn apart by hatred. Clear's throat. She took the Queen's hand. If you're lying to me, she said, I will personally put a bullet through your heart. Cathra smiled. It was a strange expression on a Varadi face, but somehow it looked right. If I'm lying, she said, I will hand you the gun. The alliance was formed. Plans were made. A joint strike force was assembled, combining the best human ships with Cathar as loyalist fighters. It was the largest military operation in human history. Among the medical personnel assigned to the strike force was a 46-year-old field surgeon named Danny Cole. He did not know why he had been chosen for this mission. He did not know that the alien queen he had saved as a child was now leading the attack. He only knew that people would be hurt and he would be there to help them. As the fleet prepared to jump toward Varith Prime, Danny looked out the window of the medical ship at the stars. Somewhere out there the war was waiting. Somewhere out there his past was about to find him. The sky above Varith Prime burned with fire and light. Ships clashed in the darkness of space, human vessels and Varat warships tearing each other apart. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. Debris fell toward the planet below like metal rain. The battle was the largest the galaxy had ever seen, and no one knew who would win. On the surface, the fighting was even worse. Human soldiers and Varadi loyalists pushed forward through the streets of the capital city, fighting for every building, every corner, every meter of ground. The user forces fought back with desperate fury, knowing that defeat meant death. Danny Ko worked in a forward medical station, a large tent set up behind the front lines. The wounded came in waves, carried by their comrades or dragging themselves through the dirt, humans with burns and broken bones, Varadi loyalists with holes in their scaled bodies. Danny treated them all the same. His hands never stopped moving. He stitched wounds, set bones, stopped bleeding. He shouted orders to his team and whispered comfort to the dying. He did not think about the battle or the war or the future. He only thought about the person in front of him, the life that needed saving right now. Hours passed. The fighting grew closer. Danny could hear explosions outside the medical tent, feel the ground shake beneath his feet, but he did not run. This was his place. These were his people. A young human soldier was carried in, her chest torn open by variety weapons. Danny looked at the wound and knew she would not survive. There was too much damage. There was nothing he could do, but he tried. Anyway, he always tried. He was still working on her when the tent flap opened, and a variety officer stepped inside. Danny looked up, ready to demand help, and froze. The Varette was tall and beautiful, her scales shining even through the dirt and blood that covered them. Her eyes were the color of broken amethysts, purple and deep and filled with a pain that had nothing to do with physical wounds. Danny knew those eyes. He had seen them open for the first time on an ice moon 23 years ago. Cathara, he whispered. The queen stopped. She had come to the medical station to check on the wounded loyalists, to show them that their queen was still fighting beside them. She had not expected to find him here. She had dreamed of this moment for so long that she had almost stopped believing it would ever happen. But here he was, older now, with gray in his hair and lines on his face, but his eyes were the same. His hands were the same, the hands that had saved her life. Danny Cole, she said. Her voice was barely more than a breath. The young soldier on the table stopped breathing. Danny looked down at her, at his bloody hands, at the life he could not save. He closed his eyes for a moment, then he gently covered the soldier's face with a cloth and turned back to the alien. "Queen, you grew up," he said. It was a stupid thing to say, but he could not think of anything else. Hithara stepped closer. Around them, the medical team had stopped working, staring at the strange scene. Human and Varadi, wounded alike, watched as their queen approached. The aging medic, "I never forgot," Cathara said. "I never forgot your hands, the way they were always warm, the way they were always gentle." Danny shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Cathara said, "that is not true. Anyone else would have let me die. Your captain wanted to let me die, but you refused. You gave me your food, you gave me your warmth, you gave me hope." She reached out and took his hands in hers. Her touch was cool and smooth, just like he remembered, just like that night on the ice moon when a dying alien child had touched his face for the first time. "Everything I am," Cathara said, "I am because of you. Every treaty I signed, every war one stopped, every life I Saved, it all started with your hands. Danny did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just a medic. He just helped people. That was all he had ever done. But looking into Cather's eyes, he began to understand. Sometimes the smallest actions have the largest consequences. Sometimes a single moment of kindness can echo across decades and light years. Sometimes one person doing one good thing can change the entire universe. That an explosion shook the ground. Outside, the battle was reaching its peak. I have to go, Keith said. Varric is in the palace. I have to end this. Then go, Danny said. Finish it, Keith nodded. She started to turn away, then stopped. After this is over, she said, will you stay? Will you help me build something new? My people need to learn what your people know. They need to learn that there is another way. Danny looked at the wounded soldiers around him, Human and Verret lying side by side. He thought about all the years of war, all the death, all the pain, and he thought about the future, a future where it might be different. Yeah, he said. I'll stay. Cathara smiled. Then she was gone, running toward the palace, toward her destiny. The battle for Vath Prime lasted another 6 hours. Catharara led the final assault herself, cutting through the palace guards, climbing the steps to the throne room where Vorach waited. Their fight was short and brutal. When it ended, the general laid then at her feet, and the war was over. The User Alliance crumbled within days, without Vernac to hold them together. The other generals surrendered or fled. Cathar reclaimed her throne. The reformers returned to power, and for the first time in years, humans and Varati stopped killing each other. The peace was signed on the steps of the palace, on the same spot where the final battle had been fought. Admiral Grant shook hands with Queen Cathara while cameras broadcast the moment across the galaxy. 2 enemies choosing to be friends, 2 peoples choosing to forgive. Danny watched the ceremony from the crowd. He was tired, his hands hurt, but he was smiling. Kier saw him there. She paused in the middle of her speech, looking out at the aging medic who had started everything. This peace, she said, is built on a simple truth, that kindness is stronger than cruelty, that mercy is braver than war, that the hand extended in help is more powerful than the fist raised in anger. She looked at Danny. Human taught me this, a human who had nothing to gain and everything to lose, who saved a dying alien child because it was the right thing to do. His name is Danny Cole, and I want him to know that I never forgot. The crowd turned to look at Danny. He felt his face grow hot. He had never liked attention, but Cather was not finished. Every hand I have ever offered in peace, she said, I offered because he showed me what hands could do. Besides destroy, every word I have ever spoken of kindness, I spoke because he taught me that softness is not weakness. She stepped down from the platform and walked through the crowd until she stood before him, the queen of an empire, standing before an old medic with calloused hands. Thank you, she said. Thank you for believing I was worth saving. Danny did not know what to say. He had never known what to say. So he did the only thing that felt right. He took her hand, and in that moment on that battlefield turned meeting ground. Human and Varati saw something new, not enemies, not strangers, but 2 peoples, joined by something older than war and stronger than hate. By mercy given freely. By mercy, remember. By mercy returned. The universe would never be the same.